Thanks, Hank, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here for the last talk of the day. Very grateful that you are here, and even more so if you're still paying attention. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Lisa Loof, and I've recently joined Archmanu as one of the postdoctoral fellows. So the projects I'm going to be talking to you about today are situated in the management lab. So specifically, we'll start off with institutional change in the AEC sector. So quick show of hands, who here has read cover to cover the NSCA 2021? Oh, really?
We asked you a question.
It's a pretty big document, so I'm impressed that anybody has. For those who have, or for those who haven't, we know that this is an important text. It's fundamental to shaping what it means to be an architect in Australia, because the standards directly impact architectural education, accreditation, and practice. In this research project, we're interested in what shaped the 2021 revision. So more than just the bureaucratic steps that a standard needs to follow to be updated, we're interested in the institutional forces, stakeholder interactions, the environment, and the social cultural processes that shaped this revision, and how these changes have influenced architectural education and practice. So the competency standards are not a static document. They're designed for periodic review to ensure that they remain relevant to contemporary practice. These reviews are critical moments of institutional change. When we refer to the NSCA as shaping an architect's identity, we acknowledge it has institutional power to codify, standardize, and legitimate the evolving skills, knowledge, and values of the profession. It's supposed to reflect a current consensus of what it means to be a competent architect, and it should be continually updated through ongoing dialogue and contest. So it's important for architects to challenge the standards and to contribute to shaping their own professional identity. The 2021 revision was a major shift. So it introduced or expanded on content related to understanding and respecting country, and it demanded more in terms of sustainability, life cycle assessment, and whole life carbon, as well as construction codes and building standards. So we're approaching the study from an institutional infrastructure lens. Institutional infrastructure is the interconnected system of actors, practices, material resources, and logics that support an organizational field such as the AEC industry or the architectural profession. The institutional infrastructure is what enables and constrains change in professional fields because it provides the rules of the game, the normative expectations, and the cultural cognitive frames. So what do these words all really mean? For example, the regulative component represents the formal rules, and it provides the foundations that define who can practice and how quality is ensured. These are legal and mandatory forces. The competency standards themselves are not regulative until they're directly tied to registration, accreditation, and CPD requirements. So by themselves, we consider them to be a normative component, which signals the values and skills architects should demonstrate even when they're not legally required to. The cultural cognitive component shapes what is seen as good practice, such as the shared understanding between individuals in the profession. So an understanding of what it means to be an architect. Material supports and networks help to coordinate and diffuse information and ideas. So examples of these are your universities, professional bodies, and peak member organizations. And finally, change and maintenance systems are the processes that allow change to meet the evolving societal expectations. For example, your 5-yearly review period of the NSCA, stakeholder consultations and forums, and research symposiums such as this one. We want to look at all these components to answer the following research questions. So what are the key institutional forces and drivers that shaped the NSCA 2021? How did the key stakeholders impact this development and content? How has the revision influenced architectural education, curricula, and practice? And what are the lessons from this revision that can be used to guide the integration of digital competencies in future NSCA updates? Essentially, we want to know what the good, bad, and necessary elements are. What are the things we need to consider and action to ensure that the architectural profession remains relevant and sustainable? We intend to do this through a qualitative case study, which will pull together multiple sources of data, including ethnographic observations, interviews, media coverage, and documentary information. So I've already had some really great conversations about this project, but as many of you know, I have a healthcare management background, so I'm eager to talk to anybody who is involved in architectural education, regulation, and practice to get your perspectives. Second project I'm sharing with you today is exploring the plausible futures in ADE using a human-led and AI-supported scenario analysis. In 1972, Royal Dutch Shell's planners famously described the predicament that their leadership was facing was like a canoeist who hears the whitewater around the bend and must prepare to negotiate the rapids. So this perfectly captures the deep uncertainty that defines today's architecture, design, and engineering industry in Australia and globally. Traditional ways of operating and continuing business as usual will simply not be enough, but nobody truly knows what the future holds. While architects are inherently future-oriented in their designs, the ADE industry as a whole is often reactive in its business strategy and struggles to anticipate and prepare for market shifts. Architecture firms are like the canoeists. They can perhaps sense that there will be turbulence, but can't see the shape of the whitewater yet. So the ADE industry faces several key challenges in sustainability and climate pressures, such as the need to meet net zero targets, which we've heard about today. Digital disruption, so often key decision makers lack the knowledge about how to implement digitalization to generate value. It's a fragmented industry with low productivity because of silos, inefficiency, and resistance to change. And importantly, there are strategic blind spots. So firms often treat design futures, that is, what we build, how we innovate, and business futures, how we operate and stay profitable, as separate streams of thought. This separation makes it harder to prepare strategically for the disruptions that are coming. Continuing business as usual with a focus on short-term market-based relationships rather than long-term strategic foresight can risk firms losing business to, for example, tech-based startups. Our research explores whether and why firms treat design and business futures separately, what prevents their integration, and how scenario analysis can help them navigate the uncertainties of the future. So what is scenario analysis? It's a strategic foresight tool that's not about predicting the future, but about exploring a set of plausible futures. It involves environmental scanning to identify critical trends and uncertainties the industry faces. And it allows firms to stress test decisions against these scenarios to identify robust strategies that can hold across futures. It encourages long-term thinking by changing the decision makers' assumptions about how the world works and can help them unlearn outdated mental models. And it brings together diverse perspectives to help align those design and business thinking into a shared conversation about the future. I think that slide's disappeared. But we aim to run a series of workshops for the study, and we'll look to collect data both pre and post workshop through survey measures, potentially interviews, and documentary data. The workshops are penciled in to be half-day sessions, and we'll have a limited capacity of up to 12 participants per workshop. So we'll be running a limited number of workshops. This will be a first in, first serve kind of situation with priority given to Arch Manu partner organizations. With this work, we aim to contribute to both theory and practice. So the practical contributions will be a set of plausible future scenarios for the AD industry, so that we can help organizations build strategic foresight capacity and make decisions under uncertainty. This research can also help us develop industry-level insights that can inform policies, standards, and regulations. The academic contributions of this work are to extend both the foresight and strategy and the temporal sense-making literatures. It's a multi-level examination of temporal focus and strategic foresight, and there's methodological novelty in this research. We adopt a mixed method design with AI-assisted scenario analysis. So once we get ethics approval, I should preface that both of these projects are in scoping phase. They're about a month in, so very young at the moment. But once we get ethics, you will hear from me specifically. But if you think your organization would benefit from either of these projects, participating in the workshops or talking about the standards, feel free to reach out to me directly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa. Any questions? I know it's the last one. But I think the first one is really interesting. After spending years and years walking up the corridors at the university trying to change the art education from the inside and putting more digital insight into the education, we're going to go now from the outside and try to influence the competency standards in order to bring digital in there. So maybe we've got more like there from the outside to convince people than from the inside. Glenn.
Thanks, Lisa. Are you concerned that no one put their hand up about reading the policy document? Or is that just because it's dense and difficult to go through? And the second part, okay, I should have opened my eyes a bit longer.
There was one, and then
I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, Jane, but I'm sure you've read it. The question is, what do you see as that next step? So obviously there was quite a lot of change around the indigenisation. That next big leap in this sort of policy framework, what do you perceive that future being?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say I'm not concerned because it is a massive text, and if you're spending your time studying it, perhaps you're not actually building the skills to meet those competencies.
Let's ask the woman who actually have read it.
Sure.
Sorry.
Or you're amazing.
Sorry
Yes.
to say, you know, that the agony of it is that if you want to design a Master of Architecture course, a program, you have to, and that's the least of it. Honestly, I could just go for hours on this, and it's really, it's highly conflicted because. Who was it that gave us a fantastic slideshow on this? You're actually trying to educate them to two completely conflicting objectives. You know, you're trying to educate them to be an architect and a designer, and at the same time to meet, you know, for the least competent student to meet 42 professional competency standards it's a complete nightmare.
Yeah.
But it kind of is what it is, and you know, Grenfell Tower, all the kind of oblivion we have to our culture and things. Where else are you going to deal with it except, I suppose, through the profession? Mm. So I don't have any answers, but I am very defensive about that. To read that document.
No, absolutely. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. And that is a good point. It's if you are designing curricula that you really have to pay attention to what those are, because that's what the students coming out will be accredited against. That's what's there in their examinations. But competency standards are not just in architecture. They're in a lot of other different professions, and they don't need to be this complex as long as they cover those basic levels of standards. Potentially, that's what we'll find out from this project. We may scope what the competency standards look like globally and how they compare to other professions and other industries, and then maybe benchmark that against what's best practice and what's necessary so that they actually are future-proofed for the profession. Even though they will be continuously revised, we don't want them to be stuck in, the first 3 or 5 years that they're relevant, because it does take time to roll them out and then to put them into curricula.
So the other side was, and this is not just for you, Lisa, but for the room, what do you see as that next big leap? Is it the emergence of AI and its influence in architecture?
So the
And
content,
that's to help myself as an educator to update curricula before it's too late.
if I understand correctly, it's what you think the content will be for.
I'm asking you to look into the future and project what the next big leap is for the accreditation.
Well, that's what we define. So the research we do, I would argue, we research what the future could be. So we could look into the future and say, well, the outcome of PhD research, many of the PhD research might filter into practice and become the norm in 6 to 9 years, arguments there. So if you want to prepare the profession in undergrad teaching to a future that we already can see in research, then we have to bring it into the competency standards and say, you need to know about these things, because by the time you're graduated, they become the norm. So it's a bit like whatever, we know now that everybody in a firm, as a simplified example, have to use BIM. And if you have done research in the early 2000s about that BIM would be the future, it's just a hypothetical kind of case, that would be the right pace to say the competency standards have to change in order to prepare for the future. So we hope now that our research not only becomes an academic exercise into research publication, but also can influence education, because we're sitting in the same boat. We do research and educate as well. So we know certain things, but we can't really teach them.
Yeah, that's the billion-dollar question, right? What's the next big thing?
But it's also the outcome of this sector as well.
Yeah.
So to be defined.
Yeah.
You did exactly that by going to a new program and sort of consigning the professionalism to a specialism within practice, but teaching that and being more fit around being able to.
And what started us was really the notion that what Lisa showed in the first slide, it's not the 10 commandments that it's written in stone and we can't change what the profession is. It changes over time. And the last big change happened in 2021. So we want to study what happened towards that kind of change, what made it to be in the document. And if we understand that, then we could just replicate and follow a similar strategy to then put the research agendas or the outcomes of the center closer to the competency standards.
Who has read that? Not once, 2, 3, 10, more than 10 times to map it out for the curriculum design. And I'm wondering if as part of your workshop, are you running focus group and you're bringing more of different group people to the workshop to discuss about PCs and NSCA? Is it the plan? No.
I should clarify that these are 2 separate projects. The NSCA one and the scenario planning are completely independent. So with the NSCA, we will be conducting interviews. Interviews with the key stakeholders that were involved in the changes, as well as with people who are impacted by them now.
And you're comparing the 2 versions, because when updated to 2021, it was a big jump in terms of complexity of all clustering so many things into one PC, which you needed to unpack it and distribute it across multiple learning outcomes to be able to meet one PC. And imagine you have so many of them, and especially embodied carbon, caring of country, those came into action. And I completely agree. The digital literacy probably is the key word, should come there to meet some of those, and it is not there.
And you clearly are very passionate about it, so I'd love to talk to you more and get your perspective.
The one that we've been dealing.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the good news is the people responsible, AACA, they're keen to shift it. They're keen to shake it up as well.
Yes.
So
I want to be conscious of time, and there's more discussions later to happen in the bar, where we can have like what are the let's talk in the bar.
Yes, let me
about
not
that.
keep you from
Exactly.
drinking.
So it's 6 o'clock, and thank you everybody for joining today. Thank you.